Welcome back, my amazing audience and subscribers. Sit back, get comfortable, and let me tell you a story about a woman who walked into one of the most exclusive nightclubs in Seoul to settle a dead man's debt. Watching her from behind the bar was a quiet man who rarely said more than necessary, but seemed to notice everything. And then there was a 5-year-old boy with a red backpack, a child with absolutely no filter who said the things everyone else was too polite to say. He looks at you like cake, mummy. And somehow, that single comment was enough to change everything. Let's dive right in. The nightclub called Eclipse sat at the end of a narrow street in Itaewon, Seoul, hidden behind a black iron door with no sign. Everyone in the city knew where it was, and who owned it. Lee Jae-won, 34, clean-shaven, and wearing the same black suit every night, he carried the kind of presence that made people stop breathing for a second. He ran 4 businesses in Seoul, but Eclipse was the one that kept the other 3 quiet. Claudia Johnson arrived on a Thursday night at 9. She wore a yellow dress that stopped at her knees and carried a black bag over her shoulder. Her son, Daniel, held her left hand. He was 5, wide-eyed, and carried a small red backpack with a cartoon bear on it. Claudia stopped in front of the black iron door and stared at the man guarding it. He was large, bald, arms crossed over his chest. "I have an appointment," she said. "My name is Claudia. I was told to come tonight." The guard glanced at her, then at Daniel, and spoke briefly into his earpiece. He stepped aside and pushed the door open. Claudia inhaled slowly and walked inside, gripping Daniel's hand. Inside, Eclipse was dark red and gold. The music was low. A man in a gray suit approached Claudia immediately. Tall, sharp-eyed, holding a clipboard and a folder, Park Min-soo. He had called her 3 days ago. "You came," he said. "I said I would," Claudia replied. Min-soo's gaze flicked to Daniel and back to Claudia. "You were told to come alone. I have no one to leave him with. He stays or I leave." Min-soo pressed his lips together, scanning the clipboard, then Daniel, before speaking again. "He sits at the bar. He does not move from there." Daniel tilted his head. "Will I get juice?" "If you sit still," she said. He pulled at his backpack straps and nodded like a man agreeing to a business deal. Min-soo led them to the bar, placed Daniel on a stool, and instructed the bartender, a quiet man named Sung-jin, to give the boy anything he wanted that wasn't alcohol. Then he guided Claudia to a table near the stage and set a folder before her. "Raymond owed our employer 400 million won, Min-soo said. "He is dead. You were his woman. His debt is now yours." "I did not take his money," Claudia said quietly. "I didn't know what he owed. That is not our problem. You said I could work it off. You dance here. 5 nights a week. We calculate your earnings against the debt. When the number reaches 0, you are free." Min-soo then tapped the paper. "Sign." Claudia picked up the pen, but did not sign immediately. She looked at the empty stage, the lights above it, the room that would soon fill with strangers. Then she signed. She returned to Daniel at the bar. He was drinking a bright green juice, eyes fixed on Sung-jin flipping bottles. "Mummy, that man can throw," he said. Claudia crouched to his level. "I have to go do something. You sit here. You do not move. You do not talk to strangers." "The bottle man is a stranger," Daniel said. "He works here." "That's different." Daniel thought for a moment. "Okay." At 10 o'clock, the lights in Eclipse dimmed to a deep purple. Claudia stepped onto the stage in a fitted black dress, hair pinned up, face calm. She did not smile. She did not perform for anyone. She moved like a woman who had made a decision she could not undo. Lee Jae-won appeared at the back of the room at 10:15. He had been upstairs all evening, going over numbers with a man he would later remove from the city. He walked to the booth in the far corner and sat. Min-soo appeared beside him. "New person?" Jae-won asked. "Yes. Raymond's wife." Jae-won's eyes scanned the stage. Claudia was not performing. She made no effort to impress. That held his attention. "She brought a child," Min-soo added. Jae-won glanced toward the bar. A small boy in a red backpack was pointing at bottles, asking the bartender what each one was. Sung-jin looked exhausted. The boy looked delighted. "Make sure the boy gets dinner," Jae-won said. Min-soo blinked. "Sir? He is 5 years old and sitting at a bar at 10 at night. Give him food." 20 minutes later, Daniel received a plate of rice and fried chicken. He looked at the waiter, who pointed toward the dark corner booth. Daniel stared across the room. He could not see much in the dark. He picked up his fork, looked in that direction, and waved once with his whole arm. Then he ate. Claudia danced until midnight. As she stepped off the stage toward the dressing room, a man seated near the front grabbed her wrist hard. "Dance for me," he said, smiling as if it were reasonable. Claudia stopped. She looked at his hand, then his face. "Let go," she said. "Just one song," he insisted, pulling her closer. His friends laughed. Claudia twisted back, but he held on. She turned her head toward Min-soo. He was already looking at Jae-won. The man still held Claudia's wrist, and was still smiling when a hand came from behind him, closed around the back of his collar, and dragged him off his chair in one sharp motion. The table tipped. Glasses shattered across the floor. The man hit the wall beside the stage hard enough to rattle the framed picture above it. The music continued for 4 long seconds before the DJ cut it. Lee Jae-won stood over him with both hands in his pockets. His expression did not change. He looked down as if he were examining a stain on the carpet. "Get up," he said. The man scrambled to his feet. He was shaking, though he tried to hide it. You were leaving." 3 of Jae-won's men appeared at his sides. "Park." Min-soo stepped forward. "His bill is paid," Jae-won continued. "He leaves now. Make sure he doesn't come back." Min-soo nodded and signaled to the 2 men beside him. They each took one of the drunk man's arms and walked him toward the door. His friends followed quickly, without argument. The room had gone silent. Jae-won turned to the DJ. "Continue." The music resumed. Conversations restarted. Glasses lifted. The interruption had lasted less than 2 minutes. Jae-won shifted his gaze to Claudia. She was still standing where the man had grabbed her, rubbing her wrist slowly. She met his eyes. There was no gratitude there, only calculation. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No. Go to the dressing room." She held his gaze for a second longer. "I don't take orders," she said quietly. The corner of his mouth moved, almost imperceptibly. He stepped aside and gestured with one hand, the movement more invitation than command. She walked past him without another word. At the bar, Daniel had seen it too. Sung-jin had to step in front of him, arms slightly spread. "Don't look," he murmured. Daniel leaned sideways to see around him anyway. He pointed at Jae-won's back as the man returned to his booth. "That man is strong," Daniel said. Sung-jin gently lowered the boy's hand. "Don't point." "Is he nice?" Daniel asked. Sung-jin stacked 2 glasses before answering. "He makes sure you eat," he said at last. Daniel considered that. He glanced toward the dark booth. "That means yes," he decided. Hours later, after the club closed, Jae-won stood in his office on the top floor. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled to his forearms. Min-soo knocked once and entered. "She went home," he said. "The child is fine." Jae-won nodded. "The man we removed. Who is he?" "Kim Dong-chul. He runs a small lending company in Mapo. He's not important." Jae-won looked down at the city. "Make sure he understands that what happened tonight cannot be heard in this city. If he talks, he loses his lending license by the end of the month." Min-soo made a note. Then he hesitated. "You went out there yourself, boss. You never do that." Jae-won glanced at him. "Someone touched what is mine," he said simply. 3 weeks passed since Claudia came to Eclipse. She was there 5 nights a week. She danced. She collected Daniel when it's over, and then she leaves. On Fridays, she spoke to Min-soo about the debt. She looked at the number, nodded once, and asked no questions. The total was enormous, but it moved. Slowly. Daniel, meanwhile, had spent 3 weeks turning Sung-jin into his personal performer. Sung-jin had learned 6 card tricks he had never known before. He practiced a 7th at home on Thursdays, though he would deny this if anyone asked. "Do the one with the red card," Daniel said one Friday evening, legs swinging against the stool. Sung-jin slid a card across the counter. "Pick it up." Daniel lifted it carefully. "Is it the 7 of hearts again?" Sung-jin asked. Daniel's mouth dropped open. "How do you keep doing that?" Sung-jin kept his expression flat. "Magic." Daniel pointed at him. "You're a wizard." Sung-jin turned away to hide his face as he smiled. That same night, as the club filled and the lights dimmed, Jae-won sat in his usual booth. He watched the stage more than the room. Later on, he noticed Claudia slipping a small folded drawing into her bag before her shift. He had seen Daniel make it earlier at the bar. He did not know why he noticed. Just after midnight, Claudia stepped off the stage and went to the bar. Daniel was asleep, slumped sideways against Sung-jin's arm. Sung-jin sat rigid, afraid to move, a playing card trapped in his free hand. Claudia stopped in front of them. Her lips pressed thin for a moment. "I can carry him," Sung-jin said softly. It's fine. She then lifted Daniel onto her back. He stirred but did not wake fully. Mummy, he mumbled, eyes closed. The wizard knows 23 tricks. I know, she replied. She nodded once to Sung Jin in thanks. He returned the nod and looked down at his card. Claudia pushed open the door and stepped into the cold night air. She adjusted Daniel's weight on her back and started down the street. At the corner, she crossed toward the bus stop. She had gone halfway down the next block when she noticed a man standing against the wall ahead. She crossed the street. He moved too. Her pace quickened and his did as well. She turned left and he also turned left. Claudia walked faster, keeping her breathing steady. Daniel shifted on her back. Mummy, he murmured. She tapped his leg lightly. Go back to sleep. With her free hand, she reached into her bag and found her phone. The only number she had saved from Eclipse was Minsu's. She called. He answered on the second ring. Someone is following me, she said quietly, giving him the street name. Minsu's voice went sharp immediately. Go into the nearest open shop. Do not stop walking until you reach one. I will call you later. Minutes later, she pushed open the door of a 24-hour convenience store at the end of the block. The man stopped outside. He stood on the other side of the glass, hands in his pockets, staring directly at her. No attempt to hide now. The cashier glanced between them. Is something wrong? I've called someone, Claudia replied calmly. It's fine. She turned and looked back at the man. Her face gave him nothing. His phone buzzed. He checked it, read the screen, and after a second walked away. Minsu called back. A car will arrive in 8 minutes. You're not returning to your apartment tonight. Claudia's jaw tightened. All right. 8 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up. The driver stepped out, opened the rear door, and said nothing as she climbed in with Daniel still asleep against her. They drove north across the Han River, the city thinning into quieter streets. Into Songbukgu. Up a winding road lined with high walls and iron gates. One of the gates opened before the driver even slowed. The house beyond it was large, white stone and dark glass, lit softly against the night. It looked immaculate. A butler led her inside the lobby. Jae-won was waiting. His jacket was off, the top button of his white shirt undone. He looked first at Daniel asleep on her back, then at her face. Come inside, he said. I want to know who that man was first, Claudia replied as she remained there. I'll explain inside. Tell me here. He held her gaze. Someone is trying to reach me through you. She didn't speak. If I explain the rest, he added, glancing at Daniel, we'll be standing in the cold longer than necessary. She then stepped in. The living room interior was expensive, marble floors, muted art, furniture arranged with precision. It felt curated, not inhabited. Claudia laid Daniel carefully on a long sofa. She then took the chair opposite Jae-won. Talk. Jae-won exhaled once. A man named Director Kim runs a competing operation in Gangnam. We've been dismantling each other's networks for 6 months. Tonight wasn't random. He learned about you. He wanted to see if you mattered, and to test me. He was right, I reacted, but wrong about what I would do. Nothing would happen to you or Daniel. So that's why you moved us, she asked. Yes. For how long? Until I deal with Kim, he said simply. Claudia looked toward Daniel, then back at him. I don't trust you. I know. Then why bring us here? You could have sent guards. Or kept us with Minsu. He paused. Because I couldn't be sure you'd be safe unless I did it myself. She raised an eyebrow. Because, he continued, his voice low, I care more than I should, and I couldn't risk leaving it to anyone else. The room was quiet. Daniel stirred slightly in his sleep. Claudia stood to tuck her jacket more securely around him. When she straightened, Jae-won was closer. Not crowding her. Just present. Thank you, she said softly. He looked at her. Then he leaned forward slowly, giving her a chance to step away. She didn't. His mouth brushed hers once. Light. Careful. Testing. She did not pull back. He then kissed her again, longer this time. Her hand came up flat against his chest. After a while, she stepped back. They looked at each other. I still don't trust you, she said. I know, he replied. She then walked towards her son, and she lifted him into her arms. Where's the guest room? She asked. Jae-won gestured toward the staircase. Second door on the right. The lights will turn on when you enter. She nodded before climbing the stairs without another word. Jae-won remained where he was long after she disappeared. He picked up his glass, drained it in one swallow, set it down, and moved to the window. 35 minutes later, he heard footsteps. Claudia descended. She had changed into a gray shirt. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked at him. I couldn't sleep, she said. Then sit, he replied. She walked to the sofa near the window and sat, pulling her knees close. He took the opposite end. Not close. Just present. Who is Raymond to you? He asked. A mistake, she said. She stared at her hands. I didn't know about the money. About the people. I didn't know what he did for a living. I found out only after he died. I should have investigated. Her fingers tightened as she continued. I don't cry for him. I'm angry at myself. For not seeing it. How long did you know him? 8 years. He nodded once. She looked at him. Did you ask because you need it for the contract? Or because you want to know? Because I want to know, he said honestly. She studied his face. That's the most honest thing you've said to me. I don't speak unless I mean it. Silence settled again. How did you become this? She asked. This. A man who owns a nightclub at the end of a street with no sign. He looked out at the city lights. My father owed a debt. When he died, it came to me. I paid it by doing things I can't undo. By the time the debt was gone, this was already built around me. He glanced at her. Not so different from your situation. Claudia held his gaze. No, not so different. She leaned back against the armrest, eyes drifting shut. The room was warm. Safe for now. Her breathing slowed. Jae-won watched her for a long moment. Then he turned back toward the window and remained there. The morning light made the house look like a crime scene. The city beyond the window was drained of color, stripped of warmth. Jae-won had not moved from the chair all night. His coffee had gone cold once. He had made another. The second cup sat untouched on the table beside him, steam fading into nothing. Claudia stirred on the sofa. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she saw him. He sat opposite her, watching. She pushed herself upright, the blanket sliding to her lap. Did you sleep? No. He nudged the untouched cup toward her. I made that earlier. She looked at it. Then at him. You watched all night. Yes. That isn't normal. I know. She didn't speak again. She took the cup instead. Their fingers brushed when she picked it up. He didn't react. She did, and she hid it behind a sip. 30 minutes later, Daniel's footsteps thundered down the stairs. He stopped when he saw them sitting across from each other. Did you sleep on the sofa, Mummy? Yes. Did you fall asleep talking? Daniel. He looked between them with quiet satisfaction. That's what friends do. Claudia exhaled slowly. Jae-won stared into his cup, as if the answer might be there. Go wash your face, she said. Daniel climbed back upstairs, pleased with himself. Jae-won set his coffee down. He observes too much. He learned from me, Claudia replied. And from me, he added. She didn't answer that. Later that morning at Eclipse, Detective Yoon arrived before 9. She walked in alone, her gray coat sharp against the glass lobby. She was 38, with short black hair and controlled movements. Min-soo led her upstairs without a word. She sat across from Jae-won and placed a photograph on his desk. A wide-faced man stood outside a building in Gangnam. Director Kim, she said. Illegal firearms. Front companies. 2 share an address with yours. We're not here for you. You're the fastest way to him. Jae-won didn't touch the photos. What do you want? A meeting. You reach out. Offer him something valuable. He'll come. And what do I get? Your name comes out of our file. My name was never in your file. A thin smile crossed her face. It wasn't. But the file is open. Open files attract attention. You have 2 days. Then she stood and left. Jae-won stared at the photographs for a full minute before calling Min-soo in. As soon as Min-soo entered, Jae-won spoke. The police want me to deliver him. We move tonight, he continued. Tell him I want to discuss exclusive overseas distribution rights. Southeast Asia. He's been trying to expand. He'll think I'm offering access through Eclipse's shipping lines. Min-soo nodded once. He'll bring men. So will we. That evening, Daniel followed Ho-jin around the house long past his bedtime, asking about engines, tinted windows, and why the car doors felt heavier than others. Ho-jin answered 2 questions. The rest he ignored. At 8, Claudia tucked Daniel into bed. Mummy, he said, pulling the blanket to his chin. Is this our house now? No. We're staying for a while. I like it. The windows are big. I know. He hesitated. That man in the black suit. She stilled. Which one? The one who looks at you different. Her hand paused on the blanket. Different how? Daniel frowned, thinking carefully. Like when I see cake. Claudia blinked once. Go to sleep. He grinned and shut his eyes. At 10 downstairs, J1 adjusted his cufflinks. Jacket on. Phone in hand. Claudia stepped in front of him. Where are you going? Business. At 10. Yes. She studied him closely. The tension behind the calm. The way his jaw tightened before he answered. Then she grabbed the front of his jacket and kissed him. Deep. Slow. Without warning. He stilled for half a second. Then he kissed her back. His hand rose to her face, thumb resting against her cheekbone. Steady. Measured. When they separated, she was still holding him. Come back, she said. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped away, buttoned his jacket, and left without answering. The warehouse in Mapo smelled like rust and old water. J1 arrived with 4 men. Kim arrived with 6. They met under harsh white lights in the center of the empty space. Lee J1, Kim said warmly. I was surprised. You shouldn't be, J1 replied. You've been testing my shipping routes. And you sent someone to follow a woman important to me. Kim smiled. I don't know what you mean. Then I'll be clear. Stop. Silence stretched between them. Kim glanced at his men and gave a slight nod. 2 stepped forward. J1 moved first. An elbow to the jaw. Clean. Controlled. The second man lunged. J1 twisted his arm and drove him to the concrete in one motion. Glass shattered somewhere to the left. Minsu's voice cut through the noise. When J1 turned, Kim's face was pressed against the wall, Minsu holding his arm tight behind him. J1 adjusted his jacket and approached slowly. He leaned close to Kim's ear. You have 1 day, he said quietly. After that, Detective Yoon receives a file that puts you in a cell for 15 years. Kim's smile faltered. J1 stepped back. Next time, choose your targets more carefully. Then he walked out. It was 1 a.m. when he returned. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. Claudia sat at the counter in his shirt barefoot. Her eyes moved to his jaw, then to his right hand. She didn't ask. She went to the drawer, took out the first aid kit, and stood in front of him. She took his hand gently. 2 knuckles were split. Kim, she asked. Handled. She cleaned the cuts carefully. He watched her face the entire time. You're bleeding on the floor, she said quietly. I'll pay for it. She looked up at him. That wasn't a joke. He didn't respond. She finished wrapping his hand and closed the kit. A second of stillness passed. Then his uninjured hand moved to the back of her neck and pulled her toward him. The kiss wasn't careful this time. She answered immediately, her hands sliding around his neck. He guided her back until the counter stopped her. When she pulled away, breath uneven, she whispered, Daniel is asleep. He held her gaze for a moment. He then carried her upstairs. Once inside, they moved together in the dark of his bedroom with the city lights coming through the wide windows and Seoul spread out below them like it was watching. What followed carried everything they hadn't said. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't gentle. It was controlled until it wasn't. Later, the room settled into quiet. Claudia lay with her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm beneath her ear. His fingers moved through her hair slowly. You're not what I expected, she murmured. What did you expect? To be colder. I am. With everything. She lifted her head slightly in the dark as she stared at him. But not with Daniel. Silence filled the space between them. And not with me, she added. He didn't answer, but his hand kept moving through her hair until she fell asleep. The following morning, Claudia woke to cold sheets. The other side of the bed was empty, the pillow already risen. She lay still for a moment, listening. No shower. No footsteps. Claudia pushed herself out of bed and went to the bathroom. After a quick shower, she dried off, pulled on a hoodie, and headed downstairs. The kitchen was quiet. Early light spilled through the wide windows, turning Seoul pale and distant. She made coffee and stood there with the cup between her hands, looking out at the city as if it might give her instructions. Small footsteps padded across the floor behind her. Daniel stood in the doorway in bare-print pajamas, his hair crushed on one side. He looked at her, then at the stairs, then back at her. Where did you sleep? He asked. Upstairs. With the man with the suit? His name is Lee Jae-won. Daniel walked in and climbed onto a stool. She poured him a small glass of milk. He accepted it with both hands and took a thoughtful sip. Is he your boyfriend now? He asked. Daniel. Because Sung-jin said. Daniel. Okay. He drank again, eyes narrowed in serious evaluation. After a moment, he said, I like him. Claudia glanced at him. Why? Because he looks at you like cake. And he makes sure I eat. She pressed her lips together to stop a smile. That is your standard? It is a very good standard, Daniel said gravely. J1 came downstairs at 9. He stopped in the kitchen doorway. Daniel was at the table drawing with intense concentration. Claudia stood at the stove, turning eggs in a pan. The sound of it, oil, a spatula against metal, a child humming, filled the room. He was not used to this. Daniel looked up and pointed a crayon at him. Mummy says you are Lee J1. That is correct. I am Daniel. You already know that, right? I do. Do you like eggs? Yes. Daniel nodded once, satisfied. Good. Mummy makes very good eggs. Then he went back to his drawing. J1 looked at Claudia. She kept her face turned toward the pan, but the tips of her ears had gone red. He took a seat, and she placed a plate in front of him without being asked. Their fingers didn't touch this time, and he noticed. 3 days passed quietly. Detective Yoon had told J1 to wait for her signal before Kim moved anywhere. Minsu arrived each morning with overnight reports. In the afternoons, Claudia took Daniel to the small park at the bottom of the road. Each time, J1 found himself standing at the window, watching, and each time, he told himself he was monitoring the street. On the 4th morning, the intercom buzzed. Claudia was in the kitchen. Daniel sat at the table, drawing another elaborate battle between dinosaurs and stick figures. The sound cut through the house. She walked to the screen beside the front door. 2 men stood at the building entrance. One held something up toward the camera. It looked like a badge. Delivery, the man said. She pressed the button for Ho Jin's line. Silence. Then she pressed again. Nothing. Claudia stared at the screen. Then she moved back to the kitchen, and then she looked at Daniel. Come here, she said, her voice level. He came immediately. She took his hand and walked him upstairs. Her steps were steady. In the bedroom, she opened the wardrobe and moved the hanging clothes aside. Get inside. He did. She crouched in front of him, both hands on his shoulders. Stay here. Make no sound. No matter what you hear. Do you understand? His eyes were wide, but he nodded. Mummy. Quiet, she said gently. Everything will be okay. She closed the wardrobe and pushed a chair firmly against it. Then she walked back downstairs. She went to the kitchen drawer and took out a knife. Her hand didn't shake. She called J1. 2 men are at the door, she said. Ho Jin is not responding. She heard movement on his end. Fast. Controlled. Do not open the door. Get away from the entrance, N. The lock clicked and the door was opened. They had bypassed it. The first man stepped in and moved toward her. She threw the knife. It hit the wall beside him and stuck there. He flinched. 2 seconds of hesitation. She used them. He lunged anyway and grabbed her arm. She drove her knee up hard into his thigh. He buckled. She ran for the hallway. The second man cut her off. She stopped between them. The first had recovered. He shoved her into the wall and pinned her there. The impact rattled her teeth. His partner pulled out his phone. Where is the boy? The first man demanded. Claudia said nothing. The boy. Where is he? There is no boy here, she answered firmly. He slammed her back against the wall. Her head hit hard that she felt the room had tilted. Then the front door burst open again. J1 crossed the space in 4 strides. He caught the first man by the throat and lifted him off his feet, pinning him to the wall. His face was completely still. His grip was not. Behind him, Minsu and another man forced the second intruder to the floor. Who sent you? J1 said. The man clawed at his wrist and J1 tightened his hand. Kim, the man choked. J1 held him there 1 second longer, and then he dropped him. He turned. Claudia stood near the hallway, one hand braced against the wall. Blood ran from a cut above her left eyebrow. He crossed to her immediately and took her face in both hands. His jaw tightened. He turned her slightly toward the light, examining the cut. His thumb hovered but didn't touch. Daniel, she said. They ran upstairs. Claudia moved the chair and opened the wardrobe immediately she entered the room. Daniel sat inside in the dark, arms wrapped around his knees. Completely still. He looked up at her. Then past her, to J1 in the doorway. I did not make a sound, Daniel said. Claudia pulled him into her arms so tightly he let out a small protest. I know, she whispered. I know. Over her shoulder, Daniel studied J1. J1 then moved and then crouched down until they were eye level. You did well, he said. Daniel nodded once. You came fast, he asked. Yes. Daniel tilted his head. Were you scared? Jae-won looked at him. Then at Claudia. Yes. Daniel freed one arm from his mother's hold and reached out. He patted Jae-won twice on the top of the head, solemn and careful. Jae-won went still. Then he placed his large hand over Daniel's small one. For a second, none of them moved. That night, the house felt different. Claudia sat at the kitchen counter with a bandage above her eyebrow and a cup of tea in her hands. Jae-won sat across from her. He had not spoken since they sat in the kitchen. I want to leave, she said. He looked at her. I want to take my son somewhere and have no one coming through doors. She said, I signed a contract. I know I cannot break it, but I want you to know that I want to. The debt is gone, he said. She blinked. What? I canceled it tonight. Go if you want to. You are not here because of money anymore. The words settled between them. Claudia stared into her cup. A long silence passed. Then he reached across the table and covered her hand with his. She then looked up at him. Neither of them moved. Then, she turned her hand under his and held it properly, palm to palm, as if she had reached a decision and did not intend to take it back. I am tired, she said. Not dramatically. Just the truth. I know. I don't want to be afraid in a place I am sleeping. You won't be. Not anymore. She studied him across the small table. How do you know? Because Kim is finished. Yoon has everything she needs. By morning it will be done. He didn't look away. And anyone who touches you answers to me. Silence stretched between them. She did not flinch from the weight of that. That is a very large promise. I don't make promises I can't keep. She looked down at their hands. His thumb had stilled against her skin, waiting. She exhaled slowly, and something in her shoulders lowered. Something that had been there so long she had forgotten it wasn't permanent. Then she stood. He stood with her, not releasing her hand until she did. She looked at him once, as if measuring something final, then stepped forward and pressed her face against his chest. He went still for half a second. Then his arms came around her. Firm. Secure. He held her the way he held everything that mattered, without noise, without display, without hesitation. She stayed there longer than she meant to. At 7 the next morning, Director Kim was arrested outside his Gangnam office. Detective Yoon stood a step behind two uniformed officers as they guided him down the front steps in handcuffs. The morning air was sharp. Cameras were already gathering at the curb, drawn by a tip no one would admit to giving. He didn't resist. His eyes shifted once, past the officers, scanning the street like he expected to find the person who had handed over the precise documents that broke him. He didn't see anyone. Yoon watched him without expression. When the car door shut, she turned away and made one call. It is done, she said when he answered. Good. We are finished now. Whatever you do after today is your own matter. Understood. And Lee Jae-won. A brief pause. Keep her out of it going forward. The line went dead before he could reply. Jae-won stood at the window with the phone still in his hand. Behind him, Daniel's voice carried clearly from the kitchen. But how many numbers can you count to? 1,000,000, Min-soo replied with dignity. Count? No. Why not? It would take 9 days. Daniel considered this. Okay. Do you know any card tricks? No. Sung-jin does. He is a wizard. Do you know Sung-jin? I work with him. Is he nice to you? Min-soo's gaze drifted toward the ceiling. He does his job. Daniel frowned thoughtfully. I will tell him to be nicer. Min-soo pressed his lips together in a line that might have been suffering. Claudia stood at the counter, scrambling eggs. She wasn't helping at all. Her shoulders were shaking. Then Jae-won turned to the scene in the kitchen. Min-soo, in his impeccable suit, folder clutched like a shield, cornered at the breakfast table by a 5-year-old in a white t-shirt. Claudia barefoot, wearing an oversized shirt and black trousers, trying not to laugh. Daniel had moved on to colors. What is your favorite color? Blue. Mine is red. Because of my backpack. Do you have a backpack? I carry a folder. That is not the same thing. I am aware. Jae-won allowed himself a small smile before he walked into the kitchen. Min-soo straightened immediately. Sir, the morning report. Later. Then Jae-won turned to Daniel. Did you eat? Daniel pointed proudly at his empty bowl. I ate everything. Even the bits I do not like. Good, Jae-won said. He looked at Min-soo. Come back at noon. Relief flickered across Min-soo's face before discipline erased it. He exited with composure intact. Daniel watched him go. He is a little stiff. He is, Jae-won agreed, pouring coffee. You should tell him to loosen up. I will pass that along. Claudia set a plate in front of him. Their fingers brushed. She didn't pull away immediately. "It's finally over?" she asked. Kim was arrested this morning. Her breath left her slowly. She closed her eyes for a second, both hands rising to cover her face before dropping again. When she looked at him, he was watching her the way he always did. Steady, attentive, as if nothing else in the room required his focus. "Daniel," she said without breaking eye contact, "go brush your teeth." Daniel glanced between them. He was quiet for a moment, calculating. "Okay." Then he carried his bowl to the sink and headed down the hall. Halfway there, he stopped and turned. "Are you going to kiss?" he asked. Claudia closed her eyes. "Daniel, because when two people look at each other like that, teeth. Now. I am just asking. Now." He disappeared, footsteps quick and satisfied. The kitchen fell silent. Jaewon set his cup down and stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel the heat of him. "I don't know how to be with someone," he said. "No ornament. No hesitation. I know how to run things. I know how to protect things. That's what I know. That is not nothing. I've done things I can't undo. I know." He searched her face for doubt. He didn't find it. Then she stepped forward and slipped her hands around his neck. "I know what you are," she said quietly. "All of it. I am not staying because I don't know. I am staying because you are also the man who made sure my son ate dinner in your club before you even knew his name." Something shifted in his expression, small, almost imperceptible. He leaned down and kissed her. Not gentle, not hesitant. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a question. It was a claim made without words, a boundary drawn around her and the life she carried with her. She answered him just as firmly. When they parted, neither of them spoke. From the hallway, a small voice called, "I brushed properly." Claudia laughed into Jaewon's shoulder. That night, at Eclipse, Sungjin wiped the last of the glasses and found a folded napkin tucked under the corner of the bar stool where Daniel always sat. He unfolded it. It was a drawing. 3 stick figures. A tall one in a dark jacket. A medium one with curly hair. A small one with a red backpack. Underneath, in large uneven letters, "My family." Sungjin looked at it for a long time before he folded it carefully and placed it in his shirt pocket, next to the first one that said Suinjin is a wizard. He turned off the bar lights and he went home. And that is the end of the story. Thank you so much for watching, my amazing audience and subscribers. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. I will see you in the next one.